Sure. So first of all, the primary test we're using for the return to work program is the diagnostic test, sometimes referred to as the CPR test. And that is to determine whether you have the virus or not. The serology test, sometimes referred to as antibody, is a test. It's a blood-based test. It will determine that you have the antibody. So it does indicate that you had the virus, which is helpful to know, particularly for us going forward to understand whether you had the virus, given that there's so much uncertainty about the long-term consequences of having the virus. And then secondly, is we also understand that past viruses like SARS and MERS, there has been immunity for a period of time. Well, we don't have enough data yet on the coronavirus to determine if that's true for this virus, but it's likely there will be some immunity for a period of time.
So, Steve, as far as your return to work, scaling up of test sites, is that something that you think is necessary for employees to do, to take a virus test before returning to work, and how often? It just feels very unstandardized right now as companies make the tough decisions about whether to bring workers back.
Yeah, there's a lot of variation. There's variation based upon where you're located. So geographic variation, quite different if you're in New York City or if you're in Oklahoma. Secondly is what industry you might be in, quite different if you're a tech employee or if you're working in the food processing industry, or if you're in healthcare. And then finally, what type of employee you are, a professional employee primarily in the office, or you're a manufacturing employee, wide variation. So when we work with employers, you see one. Everyone has a different approach on what we might do.
Steve, it's Meg Terrell. I'm curious about your capacity targets. You say as you're introducing this employer program, you aim to get up to 150,000 diagnostic test capacity per day from about 80,000 per day now, and almost doubling. But you've also noted that while you do have supplies to meet your current capacity targets, the global supply chain is still under some stress. What can you tell us about what you're seeing in the supply chain now? And do you have everything you need to get up to that 150,000 test a day threshold?
Yeah, we've made significant progress. If you remember, this all started in early March. We actually brought up our first test on March 9th. And today, as you mentioned, Meg, we're at about 80,000 tests per day. By the end of May, beginning of June, we'll be at 100,000 tests. We'll be bringing up a number of new platforms throughout our laboratories, and that will allow us to get to 150,000 tests by the end of June. So roughly, we'll be doing about 4 million tests per month. This is the molecular test. And there's several parts of allowing us to be able to do that. One is we have to have a lab capacity. And you mentioned those reagents that are necessary in the equipment we run in those labs, but also the front end, the specimen collection process. We need to have those swabs and those capabilities in place to be able to do those kind of volumes. But we're confident, given our supply chain and what we've done with our partners in a variety of industries, to be able to deliver those kind of volumes going forward.
Is there one area of the supply chain that's kind of a weak link right now? Is it the supplies? Is it the transport media? Is it the reagents? Is there one thing that gives you worry as you do look ahead to what the global supply chain will look like over the next few months?
Frankly, we put a lot of energy around the specimen capacity for collecting the specimens. That front end is quite important. So we have worked with partners. You probably have seen our drive-through events with Walmart. We are actually supporting CVS as well as they bring up their pharmacies. We're working with federally qualified healthcare centers. We're working with hospital systems. So a variety of venues to make sure there's enough front-end capacity. And when we get to employers, when we work to bring in their specimens, we're actually working on on-site events with those employers as well.
Steve, what sort of positivity rates are you seeing across the country right now, and which hotspots do you think we should be particularly worried about?
Yeah, we still have a lot of variation throughout the country. If you look at the primary test, again, the PCR molecular test, it ranges from low single digits to double digits. The hotspots are primarily those that we've talked about over the last several weeks. It's New York, it's New Jersey, portions of Louisiana, portions of Florida. in portions of the West Coast. But there is wide variation in the results so far.
And finally, Steve, how do I know what test I'm getting? I mean, we had CNBC report every time a company comes up with a new innovation, and it's always faster to get back to people, and it's always more accurate than the last one. But it feels like all the tests are out there. So if I call Quest, which tests are you administering, and how do patients, how do consumers know what they're getting, and how can they ask to get better ones?
Yeah, so at Quest Diagnostics, we'll only bring to market those tests that have been validated by us. And so we have looked at what we need to do to validate both the specificity and sensitivity of the testing. So that's a measure of their accuracy. And we've worked with platform providers, these manufacturers that provide us the test systems. And all those test systems have been qualified and approved through the FDA process. So we're highly confident when we bring a test to the marketplace, it'll be the quality that you've come to recognize and appreciate and expect from Quest Diagnostics.